Hey everyone, it's the Nitty Professor. Today we're going to cover the topic of breaking in heritage boots, what makes it challenging, what makes it worthwhile, and we're going to start with some of the characteristics of boots that can be sort of on a plus or minus scale as far as making the break-in process a little harder or a little easier. Now, one of the factors that's key in this whole thing is the leather. So that's, kind of obvious. Some leathers are easier to break in than others. Let's take this example here. These are Wolverine 1000-mile boots in a Chrome Excel leather. And actually, I really love these boots. And just to start off, right off the bat, these boots were not terribly hard to break in. They're very comfortable. I probably only had to wear them half a dozen times. And part of the reason is this supple leather that's, tough. I mean, it's taking a hit there with the whatever I got on it. It's probably some kind of, cement. I don't know. But even though we have cap toes here, I didn't have any problem breaking in this Chrome Excel leather from Horween. It's just a really great option as far as if you want to avoid a protracted break-in period and you still want something that's going to hold up. I think it's just a really great product. Now, another kind of leather that's going to be fairly easy to break in is going to be a suede. These are my Main Street boots from White's, and this is a lined leather, so there are 2 layers here, which makes it really durable. But as a suede, this leather is just, pretty supple, and the lining is calfskin, which again really doesn't demand a whole lot in the way of break-in. Now, another leather that isn't too demanding, in my experience from the break-in standpoint, is kudu. These are the Allegheny model from Parkhurst in a beautiful kudu leather. And again, it's really, it's super elastic. It's flexible. It's not that it doesn't support. In fact, these, I don't even know if this is a structured toe. It's minimally structured. Let's put it that way. But it's just, I wore these one day and I had them on for 4 or 5 hours and I was like, that was easy, So kudu, it's another one that was no problem. On the other end of the scale, so let's look at, my dog's been kind of panning on these boots. So this is a Rambler leather. Now, I finally feel like I have gotten these broken in and comfortable. I can wear them 6-8 hours, no problem. The Rambler leather is gorgeous. These are from Truman, and if you really kind of study what's going on with this leather, we've got some really interesting sort of veining and stuff. It is made to be worn sort of inside out, so the rough side is the tan side. It's kind of like a rough out. But what distinguishes it is that it is shrunken. So the Rambler leather is going to be very dense. It's shrunk down 30% from its original, size. And this by design, it's supposed to be very tough. So this was hard to break in. And whenever I see Rambler leathers all the time, they're really desirable because they're just going to hold up forever. I'm like, do I want to go through that again? So it's an investment, right? If you want to make that investment, then, go for it. Just kind of be aware that if the leather is a Rambler, it's going to be tough to break in because it is shrunken. Another example of a shrunken leather that I have 2. This is Bison, and the Bison, as Bison per se, it's going to be a little bit easier to break in than other leathers because it's just not quite as tough. On the other hand, again, this is shrunken, and it probably is shrunken because, otherwise it would be like slippers, which is not the worst thing in the world, right? But, again, a little bit trickier to break in, and this has like a double-layered cuff on it. So, the leather itself is going to make a big difference. If you have a Rambler leather like this with, really dense fibers or firm fibers, and it could also be that maybe it's like even heavily finished and you have to like work through the wax or work through the oil before it conforms to your foot. Now, I don't have any examples of this sitting just right here. I do own some, I just didn't get them out, but vegetable tanned leather also tends to be stiffer. It's going to take longer to break in than your Chrome Excel tanned leathers. And again, it's by design. You know, it's going to wear harder, and that can be what you want, but it may or may not be what you need. You know, so it's like you're paying a price in a way. If you want, again, you want to make that investment in a leather that's going to be tough to break in, but once you do, it's going to be there and it's going to support you for a long time and serve your feet really well. It's not to say the other leathers won't. They will, but, you know, it just depends on the level of wear that you're subjecting them to, how hard you're going to wear them. Let's look at some other factors that can influence the degree of difficulty of breaking in. Let's take these boots right here. So another thing that makes these a little bit more work to break in is that midsole. That midsole, and it is going to be a vegetable tan leather. A good boot is going to have vegetable tan leather, that stiff, nice, firm leather for the midsole. That's a pretty thick midsole. Compare that to, let's take these Iron Rangers, and this leather is from the Foot Tannery. I have never had a problem breaking in a leather from the Foot Tannery from Red Wing. I'm going to go on a line and say that they don't produce shrunken leathers. If I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. I have not run into that. So again, very easy to break in. But look at the midsole. When you compare that midsole with the one I just showed you, it's just way less. You know, that's just thinner. And what we have inside here is some cork filler. Even the whites have a thicker midsole than these Red Wings. And in fact, the midsole on these main streets were probably the hardest thing to break in. So compare. So if you have a good, robust midsole, that's going to make a difference as far as the break-in goes. On the Parkhurst, we see, you know, that midsole is pretty substantial. I'm going to go on a argue that the Truman's is even more robust. So I think even the bottom sole is a little thicker. Of course, here we have a lug sole, so it's different footprint. And here we have the Truman specific flat sole. So in any case, the midsole is going to make a difference. The shank is going to make a difference. I believe these Parkhursts have a leather shank. It could be steel. I'm frankly not positive. But it's something that you want to look for. So if you are looking for something that is really robust and solid, look for a steel shank. Most Heritage boots do have steel shanks. Some have leather shanks. And some of the lower end ones have a shank that maybe is like some kind of plastic. And those may or may not, well, they probably won't conform to your foot all that well. So the steel is going to offer the best comfort. A leather shank is going to offer, let me rephrase that. A steel is going to offer the most support. Steel shank is going to offer the most support. Leather shank is going to offer the most comfort and the easiest break-in. So it's something you just want to be aware of. To be honest, I've forgotten a lot of the shanks in my boots. I think most of them are steel based on my experience with trying to bring them through airport security. So that brings us to the outsoles. The outsoles are also going to make a difference. This is a lug sole, but this lug sole is less substantial even than the one on this shrunken bison boot from Truman. They're very similar, but you know, you can even, like, if I look at these from the bottom, the lugs are just a hair deeper on the Trumans, and the sole, like the depth of the sole is a little greater, so it's a little bit tough to compare here with my phone camera, but you might be able to tell there's just a little bit of difference. The Parkhurst is just a little thinner. So again, more robust break-in. On the other hand, let's look at the welt. So the welt, that's another factor. This is a storm welt on here. There's a lip that goes up against the leather, and it's there obviously for protection to keep water out. And a more substantial welt is going to make a difference. Even so, in the Parkhurst we have this one. Let's look at the welt on the whites, and it's a very robust welt, but it's not a storm welt, and that's going to make a difference. As far as one that is fairly insubstantial, let me see if I can find, well, I really don't have an example of that. All of my welts are going to take a while to break in. This is just your standard Goodyear welt here on the Wolverines. So in general, heritage boots are going to have a good solid welt. It's not going to be plastic. And the storm welt's going to be even harder to break in than just a regular Goodyear welt. So the last factor that we could look at is the shape of the last. What would make a boot hard to break in? Well, it doesn't match your foot. That's really the bottom line. And I have gone through that. I don't have any boots here in front of me for which that is the case. All these boots fit me well. As far as the ones that were easiest to break in, and we can look at a few reasons why, that is these Higgins Mill boots by Allen Edmonds. And even though this leather is lined, this suede, although it's weatherproof, it's very insubstantial. I mean, these boots, these are really slipper-like. These are really, even the sole, it's called a light sole. It says extra light, but it's just really, it's just nothing. I didn't have to break these boots in at all. And you can see from the quality of the welt that the leather isn't terribly great on these. And so whether it's vegetable tanned or not, I don't know. So these boots were a snap to break in, but there's a cost to that because I don't think they're going to last very long. I do tend to wear them in the winter because I can just throw them on and they are waterproof. But if I try to do the same trick here, I can barely bend these. I can just barely flex. So huge difference, right? Boom. No problem. These babies, it's going to take a lot more work. And I have everything in between. Let's look at the whites. The whites have a pretty good midsole. And here we have the day-night sole. That's thinner, right? That's a less of a substantial sole because these are more of a out-and-about boot. So these are still very sturdy, but obviously easier to break in than, for example, these babies here. Not much flex at all. Not much flex at all. Crazy. It's a big difference. But, you know, what do you get? Why bother? Why bother? Why do I bother going through? I mean, these babies were hard. And like I say, I have succeeded. You can see I got a lot of wear out of these. Just had to wipe the dust off them the other day. And I love this sole. I just love this kind of sole. Rocks don't get stuck in, etc. So why bother? Well, you don't have to, right? You know, you can get Higgins Mills and you can get, there's some Rancourts I have, like something with a Christie sole, you know, even a lot of the wedge sole boots without the Rambler leather and stuff. You can have good heritage boots. You can use Kudu, you know, without going through that. So the question is, why would you, right? And so I'm like weighing in my mind, like, how many more Rambler boots do I want, you know? I'm an old lady. I'm not like going on 40-mile hikes in the Appalachians with my boots. I'm just out playing with my dogs. I'm gardening. I'm going for walks. I'm getting from place to place. I'm traveling, you know. I don't know how many more Rambler boots I'm going to get. But Kudu, yeah, I'll probably get more Kudu. Or, you know, more wedge soles, etc. We'll see. But here's what you get. So you can mold the leather, the midsole, all of this robust stuff, even to a degree, even the sole, you can mold them to your foot. And I wouldn't recommend that anyone but me wear these boots because they're never going to fit anyone the way that they fit me now, thanks to the work that I've put in them. Let's see if there's evidence on the inside that I've subjected them. I can't get the light to, there we go. Come on, light. Come on, light. Well, you get a hint. I mean, they're kind of dark in there, you know, so I consider it a good sign. There's some wear in the sole. I've definitely made an investment. You can see the wear there on the ball of the foot. they fit my feet. I think, you know, even as tough as they still are, the reason that they are comfortable now is because I have squished them onto my foot and made them work. And it's a really good last for me. I have a wide foot. That's why I have to wear a men's D. When I was growing up, it was very hard to find any women's shoes that fit me without hurting, and I didn't want to hurt my feet. So, you know, we just said give up on that. And yeah, the last has to be good. But assuming you've got that foundation going, if you have good materials and you put in the effort to break them in, then you're just going to have a completely personalized fit. And so instead of becoming like softer and more subject to wear or more less likely to hold up, the leather is just going to fit you and it's going to stay tough. That's the gain, you know? So you put in the effort, you put in the pain, and what you get out of it is durability and something that can just last and be comfortable for forever. And you don't have to really worry about we'll ever find that again, because you probably won't need it again. And sometimes the boots can even become more comfortable with age. This pair of... This is the charcoal rough and tough from Red Wing, the copper, the Iron Rangers. I wear them so often, and you can see, I mean, they're getting to the point where they're kind of thrashed. But that's another sort of a gain, is just that patina and just those marks, those traces of the wear and tear that you have put onto this boot. It's almost like you're creating this really cool patina. You're creating your fit. You're creating the unique match of this boot to you. So what you're gaining is, you know, durable materials and boots that tell a story. You know, all the creasing, the darkening, the scuffing, all the patina, they're like a record of what you've done in this boot, which is kind of cool. You know, it's a cool memento. On the flip side of the coin, you know, you can kind of get carried away shooting for that. And, you know, again, it may or may not be necessary. It's not to say that, like, pain is some kind of a virtue, or, you know, that, oh, I'm not doing it right. I don't get blisters or bruises. The other day I had on my Grant Stones, and they, I don't know, maybe it was a swollen foot kind of day, and I just, right away, I wasn't comfortable. And it's not like I haven't worn those boots. They're a kangaroo, you know, they're lined. It's not like they're that hard to break in, but again, the last is just a little narrow for my foot. And I was like, well, it might be a while before I wear those boots again, because, yeah, they look great and they're really good boots. But guess what? I don't have to hurt. And the other thing that you want to watch out for is if it's too hard to break in a boot, might be something wrong. You know, maybe it's too short, or in the case of the Grant Stones, maybe they're a little narrow. Maybe I just have to not wear them on a day when it's warm and my feet are going to swell a little bit. Or the last is just inappropriate for your foot. That's not something that can necessarily be fixed by just wearing crap out of it. There are times when I like to imagine that it could, but a couple weeks ago, I gave up on a pair of boots. I was like, no matter how many times I wear these, they're not going to be nice. They're not going to be comfortable. They're not going to be what I want. It's a pair of Helms. So I brought them to Goodwill, folks. And kind of glad that I don't need that in my collection, right? I need these Parkhurst Koodoos in my collection, because these, they weren't hard to break in, but they're still super durable, and I just love wearing them, and they're so classic. So there's no reason to be a martyr to your boots. And if you want boots that you can break in quickly, there are things you can avoid, right? You can avoid vegetable tan leather. You can avoid Rambler leathers. You can avoid super thick midsoles. You can shoot for the Chrome Excel. You can shoot for the Cork midsole. You can shoot for the flatter sole. And then you've still got a wonderful heritage boot that's going to serve your needs, and you don't have to go nuts trying to break it in. So the heavier the boot, the more break-in is going to demand. Can be kind of frustrating, And again, it's probably not worth it, you know. Now, I lucked out with these boots. I was a little concerned that they were going to be tough to break in, but I have succeeded. They're still a little bit like on the cusp, but you can see I've been working at it. I've been putting them through their pieces. I still got a little ways to go, but I can wear these for 8 hours, no problem. And because the last is so good for my foot, it makes it worth it. So you just got to decide, it's going to be worth it or is it not? When you succeed, you transform a boot into something that's unfamiliar, stiff, uncomfortable, to something that's personalized and extremely supportive. And that can be worth the pain. But if that's the case, then the investment you want to make, you probably don't want to, jump in and just, wreck your feet in the name of, oh, I'm going to get them broken in a 24-hour period. It's probably not going to happen. It's probably wiser to do like half hour, skip a day, do an hour, skip a day, do another hour, and just gradually, which is what I did with these boots. And now I'm really glad because I've made an investment, and for the price that I paid with my patience, I have a wonderful pair of Shrunken Bison boots by Truman. So let me know what you guys think, what your experience is with break-in, and where you would draw the line, right? With what kind of boots you'd be like, no, I'm not going to go to that length just in the name of, breaking in something that's needlessly heavy or whatever. Love to know your experiences. Hope y'all have a great rest of your week. Take care. Bye.